I want to be clear about something before I start. I am not the hero in this story. I have heard people call me that, but I need you to understand that what happened to me had little to do with courage. I was just in a place, and that place did something to me. And by the grace of Itira's light, I survived that place and that time. You can write it down however you like, and people will make it into whatever suits them. They will always read into a story whatever they want to hear. I'm telling you what happened, though, as well as I can remember. I was a guide back then, caravans mostly, between Mareth Key, Terwind, and the interior roads towards Freewind proper and the Whispering Plains. I'd been walking those routes since I was old enough to carry a pack, as my father before me and his father before him, down a lineage of names lost to time. We were Itira's people, though I would not have called us devout by any stretch of the imagination. We left bread at her shrines, and we thanked her when the weather held, and we cursed her name when it didn't. That was the arrangement. She never seemed to mind the cursing. I think she liked that we were honest about it. I met her once, or at least I believe that I did. There was a storm in the hills east of Freeland, a bad one, the kind beneath her feet. I'd gotten separated from my caravan and was as lost as I have ever been. The compass was spinning and the stars hid behind the clouds. I had that feeling you get when the land itself has forgotten where you are. There was a woman on the road, tall, elven, with braids so long they were heavy with the rain. She did not say much. She looked at me like I was a child who had wandered too far from the house, which was the manner of speaking. She pointed west and said, "That way, and quickly before you catch something worse than rain." I followed her direction, and within the hour I found the road again. When I turned to look back, she was not there. She may never have been there at all. But my compass worked again, and the bread I had left at her shrine that morning was gone. I believe what I believe about that night. That was 4 years before the sky emptied. I will not dwell long on the night itself, because you have heard those accounts, and mine is no different from anyone else's. The stars went out, the flames died, the gods were gone, and we were alone. For the first time in my life, the roads felt like they did not know me. What I will say is that the days after were worse than the night, because during the night we were all afraid together. After the night we were afraid separately, and that is a very different kind of fear. The churches turned inward. I want it to happen on the road because the road is where you see everything eventually. Sidera's people started throwing blame at Nexus, claiming his heresy went too far. Kira's faithful, lost in their shame and repentance, declared themselves protectors of what remained, which sounds noble until you realize that what they mostly meant was protecting their own. We'd only just learned what happened to the elves of the Singing Stones when... And that had struck a chord of unspeakable fear. Aldersul's people went quiet, and that was the one that unsettled me the most. The makers, the builders, the ones who shaped stone and metal with prayers on their lips just stopped. Their forges cooled and their workshops emptied. Although whatever Aldersul had given them was not just skill, but purpose, and without him, the purpose left too. Itira's shrines were already fading. Her faith had always been loose, carried in the feet of travelers more than held in the walls of her cathedral. We had road markers and tea houses and the memory of a woman who once argued with ferrymen about nuts. There was not much to hold out to, but we held on to it. I was part of a refugee group moving toward Freewind. Maybe 200 people from all over, followers of half a dozen different gods who had not have shared a road a month earlier. They now shared everything because they had nothing. I remember a priestess of Kira and a priest of Druas screaming at each other about whose god had fallen first, as if the order of the stars going dark was something to fight over. I remember thinking that if the gods could see us now, they would be ashamed. Then I remembered that they could not see us, and the shame was ours alone. The land was changing. I could feel it in my feet, which I know sounds like something a madman would say, but I had walked those roads for 20 years, and I knew when the ground was wrong. It was subtle at first. A path that curved where it used to run straight. A hill that faced a direction it had not faced the day before. Tree roots that sat on top of the soil instead of beneath it, as if the earth had gently rejected them. And the mud. I need to talk about the mud because that is where everything starts, though we did not know it then. There was a dark kind of mud in places where the ground had shifted during the night. It looked ordinary enough. It dried during the day and softened at night, and sometimes it bubbled quietly, which we attributed underground water. Nobody was afraid of the mud, and we had larger concerns. I wish someone had been afraid of the mud. We were days out yet from Freewind when the road betrayed us. I do not know how else to say it. The trail we had walked dozens of times simply stopped being the trail. The trees leaned in directions they should not have leaned. Sound behaved strangely, arriving from behind when it should have come from ahead. Birds called in patterns I had never heard before. The caravans slowly broke apart in the confusion. Not violently, but the way a rope unravels when the threads lose their twist. People drifted into the trees following paths that looked familiar, but were not. I tried to hold the group together. That is what a guide does. I could not hold together what the world itself seemed intent on separating, and within an hour, I was alone. I knew where I was, and that was the terrible thing. I recognized the terrain. This was the old Meredith Company logging camp. Doblins had driven out the men from and claimed it as their own years ago. I'd skirted this area on caravan routes and knew its landmarks, but the landmarks were in the wrong places. The split oak was south of the creek, what should have been north. The cairn was intact when I remembered it being toppled. The creek ran west. It was as if someone had taken the place apart and reassembled it from memory, and the memory was not quite right. I turned back several times, I'm gonna be honest about that. But every direction I turned somehow curved back toward the camp. I walked through what felt like 2 hours and covered what should have been a great distance, and arrived exactly where I had started, except I was closer to the Gilded settlements. Each attempt to leave only brought me closer. I'd walked into something that I do not have a name for. A place that both was and was not the place it resembled. A space that remembered something terrible and would not stop remembering it. So I went forward, the only direction which seemed to remain. Iteria would have appreciated that, I think. She always said that the road only goes one way, even when it looks like it goes everywhere.